Good evening on what is a cool, grey and cloudy day. It is Tuesday the 11th of July. I've got a nice hot cup of tea. And a parcel to continue unboxing. And what I've got here is the Utopia Planatia Starfleet Sourcebook for Star Trek Adventures, the 2D20 system role-playing game published by Modiphius Entertainment. So, a tour ship. My friends, we've come home. Captain James T. Kirk. The Utopia Planatia Starfleet Sourcebook for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game presents a wealth of information centered around Starfleet operations and a complete guide to constructing Federation starships, space stations, and small craft, either using existing space frames or creating your own. From the 21st century to the 25th, state-of-the-art Starfleet vessels push the boundaries of known space, gathering knowledge for all. Space stations form waypoints and communities in new regions of space. Bold crews staff these ships and stations, eager to make the next discovery. What vessel will take you beyond the furthest star? The Utopia Planatia Starfleet Sourcebook contains an extensive discussion of Starfleet's history, from its humble beginnings in the 22nd century to its operational capacity in the 25th century, detailed information on operations aboard a Starfleet starship, including daily life, location, shipboard systems, procedures, and more. Guidance on how to create your group's home in the stars, whether it's a starship or space station, and on how to make that home a character in its own right. Advice on building a hero starship or station from existing and new templates and customizing it with your group. A complete system for creating your own space frames for use in your ongoing missions and campaigns. Updated game statistics and graphics for over 70 Federation space frames, space stations, and small craft. Game master advice and optional rules to enable amazing starship or station-based storytelling experiences. A handy Starfleet reference for gamers and non-gamers alike. There we go. So, the thing is, obviously in Star Trek you've got all the characters on board the starship or the space station, but basically that station or starship actually is a character in its own right. You know, how iconic is the Enterprise through all of its various incarnations, from Star Trek the original series through Star Trek Next Generation and into the films, and then before that going back to Enterprise, and then of course Voyager for Star Trek Voyager, and you have also Deep Space Nine station as well, and the Defiant. So these ships become iconic and renowned and part of Star Trek lore. They've always sort of been not necessarily been the focus of the attention of the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game. So this changes with this supplement. So we open up and we get the frontispiece with an overview of multiple different space frames and Starfleet starships, and even more in the back. Because, I mean, the thing is, every Starfleet, Star Trek role-playing game has had its books dedicated to starships, you know, going all the way back to the Starfleet, Romulan and Klingon starship recognition guides for fastest Star Trek role-playing game in the 80s. I think the only one that didn't have it was the Decipher supplement. There weren't really that many supplements released for that. So, what's actually interesting is the first thing to notice about this is the white background. It's not using the car's background, which you normally associate with the Star Trek Adventures line, typically associated with the timeline of 2371 through to 2379, with the supplements covering you know, the core rulebook, and then the various alpha, beta, delta, and gamma quadrant supplements. So, for some people, this will be a bit easier to read. So got an introduction, and then to boldly go, really talking about the role of the starship and home in the stars, and essentially supplement structure using the source book, and here's a guide, comes with it, a guide to what you should watch to get the most out of the source book. And there's quite a lot there, but I mean, it's looking at Balance of Terror, The Ultimate Computer, the Enterprise instance for Star Trek, the original series. That's just 3 episodes, but it's doing that for all of them, and it comes up right up to date, taking into account Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Discovery, and Lower Decks. But it's still quite a lot to look at. So anyway, so we move on to Starfleet's legacy. We've basically got an overview of basically an Excelsior space frame there. I think that's going to be the motif throughout. And here we begin with Starfleet's origins, its founding and going forward. State of the Union, Federation Unit in 2010. How original Starfleet was founded. And so essentially what you have is, with Star Trek and Adventures, it's focusing upon the 2370s into the 2380s. 2410 is quite further forward into the timeline for the role-playing game, as opposed to the content you are seeing being streamed and on your television screen. We have the history, fleets of the 24th century, the brutality of the Klingon and Dominion Wars. That's really covered in the Gamma Quadrant. Certainly the Dominion War, the Gamma Quadrant source book, really good source book on that war. And then we go into visions for the 25th century, because 2010 is the beginning of the 25th century. Move on to Starfleet operations. And life in Starfleet, and being posted aboard the ship, daily schedule, the bridge, interesting areas, and so here we have a look at essentially Starfleet bridge designs through the ages, sick bay, computers, computer technology by era and what it can do. Downtime on a ship, and what you can do, in your off hours, things like navigation. So it's like a bit of a not really so potted history, but it's a little it's oddly organised. It's organised more sort of like alphabetically, so it is a little bit. You think, okay, you're reading about downtime before you're getting to navigation and weapons and defensive systems. And things like moving at the speed of the plot rather than at warp speed, faster than light technologies, possibility of planetary landings. Very few starships can do this. Flight deck roles and responsibilities, because you can have you can carry, if you can't land, you are definitely going to have smaller vessels to carry you about, plus transporters, and resource collection. What Starfleet is interested in as resources, I mean, obviously dilithium crystals is the number one thing you think about, but you have a lot more that are necessary to go into building a starship. So even dealing with mining and negotiating for supplies before we get into salvaging and retrieval operations, and then the design bureau, where all the work is done on creating starships. And you've got a list of sample salvage and retrieval encounters there too, which the game master can turn into encounters, and the starship role, what it can do for your campaign, and how it can be, what its role is in your campaign. Tables of things like starship quirks, idiosyncrasies. What makes our ship unique? What is our ship's backstory? Is our ship sentient? And then we get on to creating spaceships. starships, and we've got a whole nice shot of various ships there in action. And going through the various steps of starship creation. And then doing the same thing, once you've put it all together, doing the same thing for creating small craft. You know, right down to, you know, you've got the Danube class runabout, then you've got like a Galileo 7 shuttle craft. Let me switch over to creating a space station. And then we have space frame mission profiles. So here is essentially, here are the things you're going to be taking off the shelf and plugging together to create. So, you know, battle cruisers, civilian merchant marines, crisis and emergency response, espionage and intelligence, all different options there. And this doesn't just cover Starfleet, you know, so essentially, you know, you've got entertainment and pleasure ships. We could take that and create, I suppose, merchant ships and pleasure ships and that sort of thing. Components to each individual stations aboard, the important stations aboard. This is dealing with station components, so starships, not starship, space stations. And looking at it from the point of view of an outpost, and so on, you know, so things like just doing tactical support, political operations, research station, and the like. Weapons, of course, because these all need to be armed against the threats that Starfleet will be facing, whether that's the Borg or the Klingon Empire or you know, space pirates, depending upon the era and setting. Options discussion, things like tractor beams, phasers, mines, even the warp core as a weapon, because you know there's going to be a point where you need to eject the warp core and leave it as a trap. And just like Starfleet officers, starships and space stations can have talents. We've got a list of those. Things like advanced sensor suites, annular confinement jacketing, or automated defences, all given as options, including cloaking devices. And it discusses there, for example, the cloaking, the nature of politics and the cloaking device. That you might have an emergency medical hologram, and you have full stats for the medical hologram there as well. And here we have the big list of space frames, page numbers. So, and this is the big section of Federation space frames, including adding mission pods and so on. So we start off with a J class, Y class, sort of back in the year 2102, early space exploration vessel, and you've got space frame, background details, and a notable vessel as well. So just going through, I'm just going to show you off a few of these. So some of these will be familiar, some not. Daedalus class, that's quite familiar. Then we have the NX class, of course, with the Enterprise. And then we have an Intrepid type. Flipping through. Let's see if I can find anything. Oh, of course, the other thing is, I mean, you've got the notable starship beats. If you've got a bit of background there, you know, to bring that into your game, even use it. Let's have a look. Hermes, yeah, that's the sort of style with the single nacelle engineer, basically warp nacelle there. Of course, we've got the famous Constitution class, and again the Enterprise. So lots of these, and then the crossfield design. That's obviously the USS Discovery in the 50s, and the Miranda class, which people will recognise primarily from Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, but it's one that's been used again and again throughout the period of deep into Star Trek Next Generation, and similar again with the Oberth. So what else we have got? Oh, of course, the Excelsior. Ultimately, the command of Captain Sulu, and Picard's first command, Constellation. So we've got and then the Raven class, basically notable as the vessel used by the Hansons in their essentially tracking and monitoring of the Borg. Just flipping forward. The Akira, and again, a lot of these will be familiar from Star Trek canon, from the films and television show series, and even even from actually previous role-playing games where they have been, like for example, the Last Unicorn version with all the ships in it as well did a similar thing. And so we have the Nova, which first appeared in Voyager, or had a prominent role in Voyager, and the Olympic class, medical vessel. Oh, and of course you've got the Defiant. So I could just keep on sort of like just showing your ships, but you can see what's in here very nicely. On here we have the Intrepid. And Prometheus, experimental vessel capable of hull separation and fighting separately. The Reliant. And more, just so many different vessels, and then we got onto small craft as well. Small craft, and it's going to be exactly the same, but there are going to be fewer options. I think there aren't going to be quite so many here. So dual transfer pods, Type 6 shuttle, simpler illustrations there. And then Danube class runabout, even an aero shuttle, Captain's yacht, Delta Flyer from Voyager, and then do the same with space stations, including the United Earth Starfleet construction ship, seen so many times in Star Trek, because it's where you see the ships for the first time coming out of dock, as it were. K-class border outpost from Star Trek the original series, famous in The Trouble with Tribbles. The regular class multi-probe station seen in Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, where the Genesis device was being fixed, Space Dock and Federation Starbase. Deep Space Nine, and there we have Starbase 364 Narendra Station, and that's going to tie into your Shackleton Expanse campaign, which I think is one of the best books for Star Trek to date, because it expands it in ways that are entirely new. We have Federation Border Listening Post, famous. You've seen that at the beginning of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And then we have game mastering, optional rules, jerry rigging. You want to build a shuttle, and advice on that. Maneuvering starship, zone hazards, using hazards to your advantage, and using them in the game in general. And so on. And then we have some typical encountering, so like manufacturing trouble. So these are sort of like encounters you can run, and so on, including the mission briefs. Ice ship, peer pressure. So you've got several of those at the end, which you can easily bring into play in every period, including Jeffrey Tube's Jam. That's my favourite title so far, because the Jeffrey Tubes is the access tube in Star Trek. It's just named after one of the set designers, as I recall. Retrofit gone wrong. You know what happens when you do some work on your ship and it just doesn't go right, and so on. And then we've just got the index. So yeah, that's the Utopia Planatia Sourcebook for Star Trek Adventures. Just new out from Modiphius Entertainment. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxing, where you'll see me out here with a box containing a book or game which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then do please hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of Nook. We'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.